Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys,
dedicated now to the proposition of holding politicians' feet to the fire and making them realize that if they believe their own words about what they want relative to tax reform, they want the fair tax.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
and
quick little timeout right quick at the beginning of the program.
Yeah, we're recording this a few days after that awful tragic event in Las Vegas, and we just want to make sure that people understand that, you know, that we're thinking about those folks. Our thoughts and our prayers are with those folks, with the victims and their families, and the people who are wounded. We're extremely sorry about that. But and also there are places. I was listening to Mark Levin, and there was some kind of a GoFundMe page where if you want to get involved financially, you can contribute. But we're our thoughts and prayers are with those folks, and hopefully we can avoid situations like that again.
Absolutely.
So.
But, okay, back to the business at hand. We will encourage people to correspond with us. TheFairtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. And, of course, we have our Facebook page, The FAIRtax Guys. Find us on Facebook. And speaking of Facebook...
Oh, yes. Our next Facebook Live event is... What did we say, Bob? What's the date?
The 16th of October, Monday.
It's a Monday.
Yeah, you want a Thursday, but I got a volleyball game.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Bob does so much volunteer work. But yeah, Monday the 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a Facebook Live. Obviously, those of you who are on Facebook will see the event and so forth, and we've got time, I believe, to mention it in one more episode.
Yes.
So Monday the 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, and et cetera, et cetera.
And it will be on the FAIRtax page, not our
Yes.
FAIRtax Guys, but we'll probably share it on both pages.
Yeah. The FAIRtax official has a much broader reach than we do on our Facebook page, so that's why we've been holding it on their page, and it really gets out to a lot of people, and it helps us. So,
and a quick programming note here. You remember the guy a couple of weeks ago that wrote us his word short note that turned out to be 2 pages, single space? The CPA out in Colorado.
Yeah.
He is going to be here in Florida on business and has graciously agreed to come by the FAIRtax Power Radio studios here and talk to us.
This is great.
That's great. And we got to extend a little bit of an apology to him. We looked at his last name. It's spelled W-A-L-L-E, and we just looked at that and thought it was Wall. But we have since discovered it's just changed the E to a Y, and he pronounces it Wally.
Wally. Yeah, Wally. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll be interviewing him on our next show, and that might actually spill over into 2 of them. I mean, as long as he's here, I'm going to talk to him for a while.
Oh, I have a feeling he's got a lot to say, and from the perspective of a CPA, this should be really valuable because people keep telling us, "Oh, the CPAs aren't going to like the fair tax. They're going to be..." No. That's not what Mr. Wally is saying.
Okay, Facebook Live on October 16th, and Jade Wally on FAIRtax Power Radio on our next episode next Friday. Stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, this is good. Good stuff.
All right, before we dig into the business at hand, I got to give you one more quiz question. We've been watching our Congress.gov count the number of proposals to change the tax code that have been introduced into this Congress so far. And you've been on the road for a couple of weeks. It hasn't showed because we recorded some episodes ahead. But you've been gone for a couple of weeks now. What do you think the count is up to now?
Well, I actually looked 2 days ago because I did get home about 4 days ago. And by the way, we had a heck of a good trip. 2 days ago, it was 937.
So it's up to 944 today.
Oh, my God.
So you can see how rapidly the Congress critters are messing with the tax code. And what in the world makes people believe that they won't continue to do that if they get this, great reform package that they're talking about now, the President and the Ways and Means Committee. Both of them are just talking about tweaking the income tax. And if either one of those plans becomes law exactly as it's proposed, it's going to get messed with really quick.
Yeah, that's 944 proposals by various congressmen and women to change the tax code. All right, we go to congress.gov and put in quotes in the search bar, Internal Revenue Code. It has to be in quotes. And it'll show you, because most of the legislation to change the tax code starts with to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. So you put in quotes, Internal Revenue Code, it brings up all these proposals. That's 944 in 9 months. That's more than 100 a month proposals. Now, not all of them will become law, but some of them will, and they're going to expand the tax code beyond its current 75,000 pages. And guess what, folks? We're responsible for every syllable of that code.
You got it.
Yeah.
And somebody like Mr. Wiley is professionally responsible for applying that on behalf of his clients. I'm going to ask him what he feels about that. Yep. All right, well, let's dig into today's subject at hand. In the past couple of episodes of FAIRtax Power Radio, we've been digging into the goals that the president said he had for tax reform. We've been digging into the goals that Paul Ryan and the Ways and Means Committee and all have said that they have for tax reform, and we have been showing them that, hey, if you really believe what you're saying, you want the fair tax. And today it's Kevin Brady's turn in the crosshairs.
Yep.
Kevin Brady, a couple of months ago, this was written in August, and of course August has 31 days, so Mr. Brady came up with 31 reasons why we need tax reform. Mm-hmm. One per day, and these are up on the web at waysandmeans.house.gov/31 reasons. Now, Ways and Means is all spelled out one word. The 31 is the digital representation 31. waysandmeans.house.gov/31 reasons, and he elaborates on them a little more that we're going to have a chance to get into today. But I looked at them, and there was a good bit of overlap kind of between all of them, and I broke it down. Just about all of them would fall into one of four primary categories. It's unfair and abusive. Mm-hmm. It's too complicated. It's too costly to comply with in both time and money, and it hurts American businesses, drives jobs overseas.
Yeah.
And, two of these reasons, I mean, they just leaped off the page at me the first time I saw them. The first one is his reason number 3. Americans at every income level deserve to keep more of their paychecks. Now, I've got that categorized under unfair and abusive.
Oh, yeah.
But, Mr. Brady, listen, if you ever believe what you actually... Now, politicians saying things that they don't believe, I mean, that's as old as the Republic. But we're going to call him on this one. Mr. Brady, if you believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their paycheck, I would suggest that you change one word in your reason here so it says Americans at every income level deserve to keep all of their paychecks.
There you go.
And in that case, you've got one choice and one choice only, the fair tax.
And we have to remind people that Mr. Brady, starting the first day that the fair tax legislation was proposed in 1999, was a co-sponsor. Every new Congress, he was a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 until this year, until the 115th
now
Congress.
He's got some political pressure on him from the leadership that's not letting him do what's in the people's best interest. It's what's in the party's best interest, and don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Well, he's Congress people have to run for office every 2 years, and Mr. Brady's going to catch some hell when he gets in his district in Texas, because there's a lot of fair tax supporters down there.
So if you're listening to FAIRtax Power Radio in Kevin Brady's district out there, remind him that if he really believes that people deserve to keep more of their paycheck, all is better than more. And the fair tax is the only tax proposal that lets people keep all of their paycheck, because it's the only tax proposal that gets rid of the income tax and gets rid of the withholding that supports it, gets rid of the payroll taxes that support Social Security and Medicare, does not get rid of the programs that actually puts them on firmer financial footing, but gets rid of all those taxes that the government takes out of your paycheck or your retirement distribution or your lottery winnings if you're lucky enough to pick all 8 numbers right, And
the payroll tax, we have to remind you, is the most regressive tax that we have. That, they're always talking about how they want to help the poor. You want to really help the working poor? Get rid of the payroll tax.
Oh, yes. I tell you what, every time I think about withholding, my blood starts to boil.
It's
one
insidious.
of the most insidious things I've ever done. But I'm reminded, and I'm dating myself here, of an old Dukes of Hazzard episode that I watched one time. Now, yes, I'm dating myself, and yes, I'm admitting to having watched mindless TV at one time. But Boss Hogg, this character there who is just, really a spoof of the dishonest, corrupt politician that uses your political office for personal gain. He was standing in front of this town meeting and declaring, "Oh, good news, you all. We're going to withhold your county taxes from each and every paycheck so you don't have to write a big check at the end of the year, So if withholding is an idea that Boss Hogg loves, it's a bad one and it needs to go away. Yeah. And the fair tax is the only one that makes that go away. So, Mr. Brady, if you really believe that people deserve to keep more of their paychecks, They deserve to keep all of their paychecks, actually. You need to get off this political thing that you're on now and get behind the fair tax like you were originally.
That's right. Yep. And
a couple of his reasons here on the list of 31 that I filed under unfair and abusive. The devastating death tax. Now, that is where, when of course, it only applies to really high-end estates. But still, when the government comes in, the top rate is like 40%. And you come in and you're passing along a big estate. A lot of times, a big estate like that is a family business or family farm.
Family farm that's
like that.
Yeah.
And the heirs cannot afford to pay this humongous death tax on it. So the rightful heirs, they have to sell the family business, sell the family farm just to pay the tax. That's wrong. He also notes that our broken tax code enables a broken tax collector. Now, we've been having fun using the IRS as a piñata here on FAIRtax Power Radio, and they deserve every whack they get. But he recognizes we have a broken tax collector in the form of the IRS. He recognizes, this is reason 28, our broken tax code enables waste, fraud, and abuse, and I would add evasion to that list. And our broken tax code favors special interest over American families. This is everything that Kevin Brady says why we need tax reform. And the fair tax fixes every bit of that much better than the tweaking around the edges of the income tax that they're proposing now.
I would make the case that the IRS is not broken, that they're doing exactly what they want to be doing. And they're extremely good at it, at harassing a bunch of Americans. We've talked about the civil asset forfeiture before. It's a horrible situation, and they're purposely, look back in some of our FAIRtax Power radios, the IRS purposely targeted innocent Americans with the civil asset forfeiture, freezing their bank accounts because it was easier to go after innocent and law-abiding citizens than to actually go after criminals. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Bob is right. I'm not so sure the IRS is broken, but they need to be done away with, whatever we classify them as.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And now the other one of Kevin Brady's 31 reasons for needing tax reform that just leaped out at me was number 19, which says our broken tax code encourages businesses to make decisions based on tax consequences. Do you realize that is what led to the birth of the fair tax?
Exactly.
Yeah. Says, okay, that is where the fair tax came from in its original existence.
Yeah. In fact, if you use YouTube, we just published a Bortzcast. You remember Neil Bortz? He used to be on the radio, and he's how I learned about the fair tax. Well, he recently did about a half-hour Bortzcast, which we made a video of, and he talks in specific terms about how these three wealthy businessmen from Texas got started. And Bob is absolutely right. They were grousing about all the tax implications of every business decision made. And they said, we need to do something else. So they kind of challenged themselves. What? Maybe we ought to do something else. Maybe we ought to look into this and come up with a new tax code.
So again, Mr. Brady, if you really think that businesses should be making decisions based on what's good for the business and not what's based on what's good under the tax code, how about you just get rid of the entire corporate income tax entirely and go with a fair tax?
Oh, but Bob, the corporations have to pay their fair share.
Oh, but Ron, when you put a tax on a business, be it General Motors or the mom and pop shop down the street, that is a cost of doing business that gets passed right on to the consumers. They collect taxes. They may have to write a check to Uncle Sam. It's like, the XYZ shed company having to write a check to Home Depot for plywood and shingles and all the material that goes into a shed. But when the retail customer buys that thing, the cost of the shed covers the cost of the materials, and it also covers the cost of any tax liability and the compliance costs that we've been talking about here on FAIRtax Power Radio. That gets passed on to the consumer. The corporation does not take that out of its bottom line. It just has to go through a lot of hassle and jump through a lot of hoops to comply with the code. But they pass that cost right on to us, the consumers.
And that's why the fair tax is such a business-friendly tax. When you have a business-friendly tax like the fair tax, you encourage business, you create jobs, you spur the economy. It's good for everybody. Everybody. So, getting the tax code out of business decisions will be a very good thing.
All right, get your little color-coded list there, Ron, and let's look at the purple ones, the rest of the ones that are under hurts American business and drives jobs and money overseas. These are Kevin Brady's own words as to why we need tax reform. Go.
Okay. Our broken tax code traps business investments overseas. All right. Well, what does he mean by that?
That means that there are trillions of dollars sitting overseas that could be working in the American economy that aren't, because the corporations don't want to subject that money to the highest corporate income tax rate in the world.
Sure. Look at large companies like Apple and GE. These are multinational corporations. Apple makes products not only for this country, but they sell their products all around the world. And a lot of them are actually produced in foreign countries. So the items that they sell overseas and the profits they make from those things, they stay overseas, because if they try to bring those dollars back here to this country, they get hammered at about, like 35%? So instead of that, they just keep the money overseas and they build more factories over there. They create more jobs over there, and we're back here struggling.
The president wants to bring that, down to around 15%. I think it's going to be closer to 20 by the time Congress gets done with it. But reducing it is good. Eliminating entirely is better.
Yeah.
Fair tax eliminates corporate taxation entirely, because that's passed on to the consumer anyway. The consumer will pay the fair tax at the retail level.
So if you have those trillions of dollars that are overseas, that's American dollars that are being held in banks overseas because they're avoiding the repatriation tax. Suddenly that tax goes away because of the fair tax. Yeah. What happens? That money starts flowing back into this country?
They're thinking, let's lower the rate that they have to pay on that money if they bring it back. How about lowering it to zero?
Yeah.
That will work. And another one, again, Kevin Brady's own words here. High rates for Main Street job creators is making it difficult, especially for small business. How about making their tax rate zero? He realizes our broken tax code harms American manufacturing. That's number 7. We touched on this. Number 10, America has the world's highest corporate tax rate. Number 12, it creates uncertainty for families and small business. We've talked about that. That hurts American farmers and ranchers. We talked about that with a death tax especially. Again, drives American jobs overseas, encourages profit shifting. And number 29, our broken tax code encourages companies to relocate overseas. Mr. Brady, if you are really concerned about any or all of that, pass the fair tax.
The fair tax is going to do it better than anything they propose, because, for one thing, it's, even if they reduce the tax rates on individuals and corporations, they're still there. And then what happens? And we already talked about all the proposals that Congress is submitting to change the tax code. That's not going to stop. All right. No. So they reduce the tax rates, and what happens? The lobbyists kick into gear. The lobbyists love the idea. They love this proposal, by Congress and the president, because they get to start all over again. So, however, if there were zero corporate tax rate,
yes,
there's nothing for them to work on, is there?
Yeah, so if you want to quit harming American businesses, quit taxing them, period.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair tax does that and still keeps the revenue to the government where it needs to be. So, Mr. Brady, if you really believe that the tax code as we've got it hurts American businesses, drives jobs overseas, pass the fair tax.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we end up paying for those costs anyways. We, the consumers, pay for the costs of building the products and providing the services. So we end up paying for it anyways.
Okay, let's move on to our next category. It's the red one on your sheet there, Ron. Too complicated. We have been pounding on this for Fair Tax Power Radio for a while. And Kevin Brady realizes in his reason number 5, the ever-growing length of our tax code is a reason that we need to reform it.
Oh, and number 5, the ever-growing length of the tax code. Well, we've mentioned several times, Congress.gov and all the proposals that Congress has there. Various members of Congress are making proposals, and we didn't take the time to read some of them. I was reading one the other day, and I read it 3 times, and I still had no idea what the heck they were talking about.
You're right. Well, that's what they say. The tax code is like twice the length of the Bible with none of the good stuff in it. About right.
Good way of putting it. And number 6, family-focused credits are too complicated. Yeah, that's why they have software. That's why they have people that will do your taxes for you, because when you sit there and read that stuff, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not sure.
Put those things out of business. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
Number 9, there are too many tax brackets. How about if that's true? If you believe that there are too many tax brackets, I would suggest that you reduce the number of tax brackets to 0.
Yeah, there you go. 0 tax brackets. That's good. And no income tax at all.
The FAIRtax does that.
Yep. Get rid of the income tax, have it consumption tax. That's what the FAIRtax does. So, yeah, too many tax brackets. That is easily handled by the FAIRtax. Let's see.
And so is number 11. Hit that one.
The cost of tax complexity.
There you go.
All right. It costs our economy more than $400 billion a year in lost productivity. Yeah. Businesses have to comply with the tax code. There's several sides to this. First off, they have to make sure they're complying with the tax code. They don't want to get caught and get slammed by the IRS with fines and assessments and so forth because they broke some of the tax laws. Then on top of that, they have to scour the tax code to make sure that they're taking legal advantage of all the legal loopholes, because there are a lot of loopholes in there. And if you're running a big business and you're not looking through the tax code for all the legal loopholes, you're not doing well by your employees and your customers. Okay, so businesses spend a lot of money just trying to keep up with the tax code.
That's why they hire people like Mr. Wally that we'll be talking to
next
week.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, we got to scoot on here. Time is getting away from us, but this is the insult injury department. I had to mention this one. Kevin Brazy's reason number 23: the alternative minimum tax forces millions of families to calculate their taxes twice and then pay the higher amount.
Oh boy, what a great deal for Congress, huh?
What a rotten deal for the taxpayer.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, the alternative minimum tax is just another way of squeezing more money out of the taxpayers. We need to talk. There needs to be a national dialogue about the way Congress spends money, granted, but the FAIRtax is a revenue issue, right? Mm-hmm. First, let's get the revenue issue straightened out, and that is done with the FAIRtax. And then all these crazy things can be yanked out of the tax code. Get rid of it, pull it out by the roots. Then we can fire up the national dialogue about the way Congress spends money.
Yeah, now, credit where it's due. The president's plan eliminates the alternative minimum tax as well.
Good idea.
But so that's a step in the right direction. But the FAIRtax gets rid of the entire income tax system. Okay, we are really tight on time here. Let's move along to our last category. It's too costly to comply with in both time and money. Now, Mr. Brady recognizes reason number 2, Americans spend too much money filing taxes. Down to number 8, businesses spend too much money filing taxes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's bad enough for an individual. You might have to buy software or pay somebody to do your taxes. Businesses, unbelievable. Remember the thing with GE a few years ago that they paid no taxes, but they had to submit a 53,000-page tax code or tax return.
They spent a fortune getting that thing prepared.
Yeah. And who pays for that? Their customers.
Mm-hmm. The broken tax code imposes costly compliance burdens for small businesses and large businesses as well. That's number 17. Number 21, businesses spend too many hours filing taxes. Number 25, Americans spend too much time filing taxes, a combined 2.6 billion with a B hours annually. So it is just too costly. It is just too complicated. It needs to be jerked out by the roots, and the FAIRtax is the only tax reform proposal that does that, guys.
Yep, that's it. That's the answer. Now, how do we get those answers? How do we present those to Congress? Well, we need your help to do that, folks. We need you to be active, to be proactive. And if your congressmen and senators are not co-sponsors of the FAIRtax, in the House it's H.R. 25, in the Senate it's S. 18, then you need to contact their offices and let them know that you expect them to to co-sponsor the FAIRtax. And we really need you on board with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I would suggest as well that your congressman, because you live in his district and I'm on the other side of the county, so I don't, but your congressman, Ted Yoho, has found out what Facebook Live is all about.
Yeah.
I would imagine he is not the only congressional representative that is doing Facebook Live events. These are basically online town hall meetings. So if your representative is online with Facebook, jump on there and ask him about the fair tax. Ask him what it is about the IRS that he loves so much if he's not on board with the fair tax.
And I know my congressman does, and I suppose others, they have these town halls. The phone will ring and it'll say, "Hi, this is Congressman Yoho, and we're staging a town hall right now," and you could push whatever it is and submit your own question. So in these town halls, whether it's a live town hall or a town hall, you can submit your questions about the fair tax.
And I watched Congressman Yoho's last one, and he said something that I found rather disheartening, because somebody asked him about the fair tax. Of course, he's been a fair tax supporter from day one since he got up there. And his answer to that constituent was just simply, that is something that they're just not looking at right now.
Yeah.
So he knows it's a good idea. A lot of people up there know it's a good idea, but under the control of the leadership that we've got now, they're just not looking at it right now. So, folks, you need to change the focus of your congressional representative's attention. Tell him about the fair tax. Tell him that you support the fair tax, and really tell him you're not going to vote for him again unless he gets on board with it, and they start looking at it. So you really wonder why they're saying all these things about why they need reform and all the great things that the goals that they're trying to accomplish with and all the great things that their reform package they say is going to do, and they're not looking at the fair tax. Folks, we need to redirect their focus, make the fair tax part of the national discussion, which currently it isn't, and we need to change that.
Remember, these folks work for you, all right? They are your representatives, so make sure that they understand how you want them to represent you, all right, especially when it comes to taxation. So if your congressmen and senators are not co-sponsors, you have your work cut out for you. And get your friends and relatives together, the people who live in the district, and make sure they get a calling campaign going. You can get some of your friends to start calling their offices, one after another. If they get 10 or 15 calls on the same issue, it gets their attention.
Yep, and if they get 10 to 15 feedback comments on PopVox, that gets their attention. Every one of them has got staff that's watching that.
Yep, that's right. If you are not on PopVox, POPVOX.com, Popular Voice, you can get on there and subscribe. You get a membership. You put in your name and your address. By your address, they know what congressional district you're in and who your congressman and 2 senators are. So you got to get on PopVox and weigh in on the fair tax or any other legislation that you feel is important.
And we would not be doing our patriotic duty if we did not direct people to bigsolution.org. When you're ready to help make this happen, FAIRtax.org is a good place to get educated about what it is and how it works and all it'll do. BigSolution.org is when you raise your hand and say, all right, I'm joining the team. I'm going to help this happen.
That's right. That's like our activist site. And don't forget, every Friday, there's a new FAIRtax Power Radio podcast. And the 4th Thursday of every month, there's a new webinar. And the webinar is interactive. I mean, you can type in questions and so forth and, find out what's going on. So
and they're kind of trying to tweak things to make that better.
And they are.
They are working on that. If you've been to one in the past, the one now is not the one that you knew 6-8 months ago.
Yeah. So that's going to be, you're going to see some changes there. So, right. Lots of ways to help out, folks.
Get the free app for FAIRtax Power Radio.
That's right. You can go onto Spreaker.com. You can get a free app for your iPhone or your Android, FAIRtax Power Radio app. We have a little problem with the Android app, so if you can't find that app for your Android, get the Spreaker. That's like speaker with an R. There is a free app for Spreaker. And on the Spreaker app, you can find FAIRtax Power Radio. Okay, again, we invite people to send us email, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Like us on our Facebook page. Be sure to tune in next week when we talk into Jade Wiley, this Colorado CPA. That's going to be an interesting program. You don't want to miss that at all. Yeah, and remember our Facebook Live on Monday, the 16th. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for listening, and tell your friends and family about it, okay? So until next time, I'm Bob Paxton. And I'm Ron Walero. We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it, you'll demand it. Fair tax is coming, don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming, 'cause the USA